Mercedes has just unveiled the 2024 Mercedes-Benz E-Class all-terrain wagon. And yes, it is making its way over here to the US, which is fantastic. Maybe people will start appreciating lifted wagons more. Now, I don't think they're ever going to appreciate it more than SUVs and crossovers, but we're going to have some competition with that segment by bringing these type of vehicles over here. So what we're going to do in this video is have a look at the design from front, side, rear, and we need to talk about the interior as well. But first of all, let's have a look at this article from Car and Driver linked down below. I do wish that BMW would make the new 5 Series Touring. Just put some plastic cladding on it, add some air suspension, and bring that over here as well to compete with this. I think that would be cool. And the all roads of Audi and the cross country of Volvos and so on. Very cool concept. So this luxury wagon lacks the serious ground clearance, the steep approach and departure angles, which is normal because it is, after all, based on a wagon. There is underbody protection though, plates front and rear, and the air suspension can be lowered by 0.6 inch. It lowers automatically above 75 miles per hour and raised by 0.8 of an inch. When fully raised, speed is limited to 9 miles per hour. You also have the optional full-width super screen that is very common now in Mercedes vehicles. Available information includes a compass with position details, temperature and elevation readouts, and you also have a ride height adjustment button. Hill descent control that can be set at any speed up to 11 miles per hour. You also have the optional 360-degree surround view camera system, so-called transparent hood, which means you can see what is underneath the car, which is pretty cool. Now, the only available engine option for the US is the turbocharged 3-liter inline 6, which has 375 horsepower, up from 362 with 369 pound-feet of torque, which is not bad. It does 0 to 60 in 4.6 seconds with a combined, I guess, MPG of 22. Unlike the new E-Class, though, the E-Class sedan, you can't have this with the rear-wheel steering due to package constraints, as they say right here. So with that said, let's jump in to Photoshop and let's have a look at this design, because I kind of think that the wagon looks better than the sedan, and specifically in this all-terrain version, because we do have the black plastic going all around it at the bottom here, as you can see, and coming in the side and also in the rear end, and we also have the cladding going around the wheel arches right here, creating a bit of a more rugged feel, and that's exactly what they want to go with. It's interesting because the E-Class is such an elegant luxury vehicle, and it's interesting that Mercedes is still keeping this alive. That means that it is probably selling relatively well here in the US. I'm sure it's selling really well in Europe as well. Because if I were to have a wagon right here, for example, in Colorado, it snows a lot up in the mountains, this would be a very cool option to consider, because it is not a high-sitting SUV or crossover, but it is instead a lower-sitting wagon, and I love wagons. Then we have these shoulder lines, similar to what we have in the Mercedes E-Class sedan, and this line at the bottom. With this new graphics, I'm not so sure about this black piece that goes around the grille and kind of connects the headlights to the grille. And then we have these wavy curvatures in the lower section of the headlights with the wavy LEDs in the interior and one big LED up top, looking pretty, weird when you look at it like this. It feels more like an EQ series, and I am not a huge fan of the EQ Mercedes, the entire lineup. I'm not a fan of that design yet. Maybe they will switch that up and make it less bubbly in the future. And I couldn't find a straight side view for this beautiful wagon, so instead we're going to have this 3/4 almost front view again to have a look at the side. The wheels, I do like these wheels a lot. Mercedes, as I've said before, they do some of the best looking wheels coming out of the factory. And here you can see the black plastic cladding going around the wheel arches and then coming back in the rear bumper, in the side, and also in the front end. We also have this typical Mercedes for 2023, 2024 mouth here that is big black pieces on the sides going into a thinner piece that connects the two volumes in the lower section. I think it's a decent looking design. I think it would look better in black because that would hide this piece and this would kind of melt into the rest of the body. Overall, a very cool looking side view and front view. And now this is of course the big change from the sedan because it is a wagon. So we have more volumes in the rear end. I'm still very confused with these taillights, because we have this outline here, similar waviness that we have in the headlights, although a little bit more stretched out here in the rear. And then we have this star pattern for the LEDs in the rear, and this star pattern has zero connection to the housing in which it sits within. So you see the outline for the taillights here. It doesn't feel like it has any connection to what's going on in the LEDs inside. They feel like they come from two completely different cars and then just put together in this sort of assembly. Other than that, it's a pretty clean rear end. We do have a straight bumper in the rear, and this is one of these bumpers that you don't have to be afraid of, you know, bumping into a tree or something like that, because this looks like it is just flat black plastic in the lower section with the two exhausts visible. And I think, as I said in a previous video, I think these visible exhausts are coming back. That's a trend that's been away for a while now, 5 or 6, 7 years or something like that. But I feel like that is a trend that is slowly making its way back into normal cars. It doesn't have to be super sports cars to have the exhaust visible anymore. And then you have this top spoiler. I do wish we could have hid this wiper underneath this spoiler up top, but overall, as you can see, this has just the bigger volume in the rear. I think that helps this design and makes it better looking than the sedan. We also have this curvature, which is typical for Mercedes wagons, to have the greenhouse going up here. I'm glad to see that this is all black, by the way, and not chrome or something like that. Also gloss black side mirrors with the indicator integrated right there. Now, looking at this interior with this super screen or whatever they call it, this is, I don't know, I think looking at it like this, it's so much glossy area surfaces, just flat glass surfacing, that it makes the interior feel uninspired to me, and that's just what these type of interiors do. And then we have a pretty nice looking integration of the vents. As you can see, it goes up top here and going down in the side. Then you have the big screen in the middle, you have an additional screen here, and of course a screen, completely digital gauge cluster for this new Mercedes that has sort of a bay in which it sits in. So it's not the worst integration of a gauge cluster I've ever seen, but I do wish that we did have some sort of cap that goes around it, something like this, to create more of a housing for the gauge cluster and have this be a cap, something like that, to just have less glare in this specific area. You can see the steering wheel as well is also brand new for 2024. I do like the AMG steering wheels a lot better than this design that we have here, but it's not bad. We still have a lot of gloss plastic, as you can see in the steering wheel as well, with the big Mercedes star in the middle. Center console looks fairly traditional to me. You do have the compartment here, probably some wireless charging and stuff like that going on underneath this lid. And you have very few, I'm not even sure if these are physical buttons, but other than that, these are pretty much the only physical buttons that you have in the entire interior, in addition to this wheel here and of course the buttons that you have on the steering wheel. Overall, I'm glad to see Mercedes bringing this car to the United States. We've had it before here, and I'm glad they continue to bring these cars out here to balance out the tsunami of boring, lifeless crossovers and SUVs that we have going on right now.